Are you tired of living a peaceful life? Do your friends and family still take you seriously? Well, not anymore. Introducing the Shyt Show Internet Tough Guy Starter Kit. The revolutionary online program designed to transform any ordinary human being into a full-time comment section gladiator. Inside every kit, you'll receive 1 industrial-strength webcam, 3 pounds of internet confidence, a starter pack of dramatic facial expressions, unlimited supplies of bro you don't even know, a certificate declaring you the undisputed heavyweight champion of arguing with strangers online. But wait, order in the next 10 minutes and we'll throw in the deluxe live stream meltdown expansion pack. That's right. Now you can turn every minor disagreement into a 3-hour emergency broadcast. Neighbor mowed his lawn? Go live. Someone disagreed with you? Go live. Dog looked at you funny? Go live. The possibilities are endless. Our patented technology automatically converts attention into drama, drama into content, content into more drama into absolutely nothing productive. And that's not all. The Shyt Show Starter Kit comes with our exclusive reality deflection system. Whenever someone asks a difficult question, simply activate one of these pre-programmed responses. You just don't get it. Do your research. The haters are obsessed. I'm living rent-free in their heads. Results guaranteed. Side effects may include excessive live streaming, chronic online tough guy syndrome, arguing with people you've never met, forgetting grass exists, mistaking YouTube comments for organized crime intelligence reports. So don't wait. Call now and receive a free copy of How to Turn Every Tuesday into a Personal Feud, a 900-page guide containing absolutely no useful information whatsoever. Remember, real life is hard, the internet is forever, and embarrassment is temporary. The Shyt Show Internet Tough Guy Starter Kit TM. Because if you're going to perform for the internet, you might as well make it a full-time job. Not recognized by historians, psychologists, philosophers, labor unions, conflict mediators, relationship counselors, or anyone who has ever touched grass. Offer void where common sense is present. The following documentary is presented for commentary, criticism, parody, satire, internet analysis, cultural observation, educational discussion, emotional damage assessment, and comedic exploration purposes only. In simpler terms, calm the hell down. Nobody here is claiming to be the FBI. Nobody's launching congressional investigations. And nobody's kicking in your front door because a grown man screamed into a webcam for 6 consecutive hours over a Discord argument involving cartoon avatars and expired energy drinks. This documentary examines the modern live stream ecosystem, the fake alpha culture, the internet tough guy economy, the performance addiction, the outrage algorithms, and the emotional circus currently operating inside America's digital strip mall. Any similarities to real live streamers, internet personalities, professional victims, fake gangsters, rage merchants, drama addicts, microphone screamers, chat manipulators, or emotionally unstable men wearing compression shirts indoors is purely coincidental? Probably. Viewer discretion is advised, especially if you've ever typed, "Bro, you don't know me in real life." I don't gotta you public display shows me who you are.
Analyzing evil. The Shyt Show, the Internet Tough Guy Industrial Complex. Pizzaverse Studio. A Palermo production. Original documentary. Written by Bambi Palermo. Narrated by Vincent DiPrio. Edited somewhere in Jersey after midnight. There was a time when people went online to escape reality. Now, people go online to become somebody else entirely. A tougher guy. A louder guy. A more offensive guy. a character. And somewhere along the way, the character stops being an act. That's when things get dangerous. Because the internet rewards escalation. Not honesty, not growth, escalation. More rage, more controversy, more screaming, more shock value. And eventually, the algorithm starts demanding blood like an ancient digital god living inside a Ring camera. Today's subject isn't really about one guy. It's about what happens when internet culture rewards the performance of outrage so aggressively that people slowly become trapped inside their own gimmick. This is analyzing evil. The internet discovers professional wrestling without the athleticism. One of the funniest things about modern livestream culture is that it accidentally recreated wrestling storylines. Except nobody involved can throw a punch, sell a chair shot, or cut a coherent promo without threatening to dock somebody halfway through it. Everything becomes exaggerated: the grudges, the betrayals, the alliances, the exposures. Every live stream becomes, "This changes everything." Meanwhile, it's really just two middle-aged guys arguing over screenshots and blocked phone numbers while somebody's smoke detector chirps in the background like a dying bird. The internet figured out something dangerous. Conflict creates engagement. Engagement creates money. So the system rewards emotional instability like a casino rewarding gambling addiction. And suddenly everybody becomes addicted to outrage. The performance of the tough guy. Real tough people usually avoid unnecessary chaos. Internet tough guys, they survive on it. That's the difference. The performance requires constant escalation, constant hostility, constant conflict. Because silence kills engagement. And engagement is oxygen. So every disagreement becomes a war, a betrayal, a federal conspiracy, or the biggest exposure in YouTube history. And guys, half these people act like they're negotiating the Cuban Missile Crisis, when really they're discussing live stream panel drama involving a guy named Snake420 and somebody's moderator named Debbie. The internet tough guy industrial complex survives on illusion. The illusion of danger. The illusion of power. The illusion of influence. Because online, perception matters more than reality. The digital social club. There was a time when people gathered in actual places. Neighborhood bars, back rooms, social clubs, union halls, dinners with bad coffee and old men arguing about politics loud enough to shake the windows. People talked face to face, people read body language, people understood consequences. If somebody crossed a line, you felt the tension immediately. Modern internet culture destroyed that structure almost overnight. Now the social club exists entirely inside live stream windows. The bartender got replaced by moderators. The back room got replaced by Discord servers. The neighborhood gossip got replaced by live stream exposures. And instead of sitting around smoking cigars and drinking espresso, people sit alone in dark rooms staring into glowing rectangles while emotionally investing themselves in internet wars involving strangers they've never met. And crew, that's one hell of a psychological transformation. Because human beings are tribal creatures. We naturally organize ourselves into groups, teams, crews, alliances, friend circles, communities. The internet simply digitized the process. That's why live stream ecosystems become so emotionally intense. People don't just watch the content. They join the tribe. And once somebody emotionally joins a digital tribe, logic starts disappearing real fast. Suddenly, every disagreement feels personal. Every criticism feels like betrayal. Every live stream feels like a battle for emotional survival. That's why internet communities become so paranoid. The audience begins seeing outsiders as enemies. Critics become haters. Questions become attacks. And creators slowly surround themselves with loyalists who reinforce the mythology of the channel 24 hours a day. Now the live stream host becomes more than an entertainer. He becomes the leader, the philosopher, the victim, the war general, the therapist, and the emotional center of the entire community. And that's dangerous power for emotionally unstable people to hold. Because live stream culture rewards emotional manipulation, whether creators realize they're doing it or not. The host controls the room. He controls the emotional tone, the enemies, the outrage, the forgiveness, the betrayals, the panic, the excitement. One sentence can redirect an entire audience emotionally. That's real influence. And the craziest part? Half these creators don't even fully understand the psychological control they develop over their communities. They think they're just going live. Meanwhile, audiences begin structuring their emotional routines around these streams. People fall asleep listening to them. People work while listening to them. People eat dinner while listening to them. People escape loneliness through them. That creates emotional dependency, and emotional dependency changes everything. Because once viewers become emotionally dependent on a creator or live stream ecosystem, the content itself becomes secondary. Now it's about belonging. That's why people tolerate endless chaos in these online spaces. The audience isn't staying because the streams are healthy. They're staying because the streams make them feel included. Even dysfunctional communities satisfy emotional needs. That's the terrifying genius of live stream culture. It recreates the feeling of sitting in a social club without requiring anybody to leave their house. But unlike old-school social clubs, the internet never closes. There's no last call, no lights turning on, no bartender saying, "All right, go home already." The chaos runs 24 hours a day. And because there are no physical consequences online, everything escalates faster. Arguments become wars, disagreements become blood feuds, misunderstandings become multi-week live stream investigations involving screenshots, burner accounts, fake insiders, leaked DMs, and 37 consecutive streams titled "The Real Truth." Buddy, sometimes the original argument was about absolutely nothing. But online ecosystems survive by manufacturing emotional urgency. Everything has to feel important. Everything has to feel dramatic. Everything has to feel like history is being made live on stream. Because boredom kills engagement. And engagement is the oxygen supply keeping the entire digital social club alive. That's why creators constantly tease, "Big things are coming. Everything changes tonight. I know things I can't say yet." It creates anticipation, suspense, emotional addiction. Modern live stream culture operates less like entertainment and more like serialized psychological theater. Every creator becomes the main character in their own endless digital crime saga. Every stream introduces new enemies, new alliances, new betrayals, new emergencies, new conspiracies, new emotional collapses. And the audience keeps returning because humans naturally crave narrative. Even destructive narrative. Especially destructive narrative. That's why some viewers become completely consumed by these online communities. The live stream stops being background entertainment. It becomes part of their emotional identity. And eventually, people begin experiencing internet drama with the same emotional intensity older generations experienced real-world neighborhood conflict. That's insane when you actually stop and think about it. Grown adults emotionally devastated because a moderator got removed from a live stream panel. But the brain doesn't fully separate digital tribalism from real tribalism. Emotionally, the conflict feels real. That's why live stream wars spiral so quickly into obsession. People aren't just protecting a creator. They're protecting their tribe, their routine, their emotional comfort zone, their sense of belonging. And once belonging becomes tied to conflict, the community begins unconsciously needing drama to survive. That's the dark side of the digital social club. Chaos becomes culture. The audience begins expecting emotional warfare as part of the entertainment package. If the stream is peaceful, people lose interest. But if somebody's screaming, crying, exposing messages, threatening to leave forever, suddenly everybody rushes back into the room like the apocalypse just started inside a Buffalo Wild Wings parking lot. Because the internet trained people to emotionally consume instability as entertainment. And guys, that may be one of the strangest psychological developments in modern human history. The algorithm of humiliation. The internet figured out something ancient about human nature. People love spectacle. Not inspiration, not wisdom, not balance. Spectacle. That's why ancient civilizations packed arenas to watch public humiliation, executions, fights, and chaos. And somehow humanity recreated the exact same psychological structure using smartphones, live streams, and Wi-Fi. Modern internet culture runs on humiliation. Public embarrassment became content, emotional breakdowns became entertainment, and the algorithm quietly learned that outrage keeps people watching longer than happiness ever could. That's the business model. The more unstable the stream becomes, the more attention it receives. And attention is the closest thing the modern internet has to religion. Because attention means validation, money, relevance, control, importance. That's why creators become addicted to it. At first, most live streamers just want to build an audience, maybe tell stories, maybe make people laugh, maybe feel less alone. But then the algorithm starts rewarding chaos. Suddenly, the calm streams get no views. But the second somebody screams, "This dude betrayed me," boom! Views spike, comments explode, clips spread everywhere. People flood into the stream like somebody announced the end of civilization over a Discord call. That creates a horrifying psychological loop. The creator subconsciously learns peace equals invisibility, chaos equals relevance. And once the brain connects emotional instability with attention, the performance escalates naturally. That's why so many live stream ecosystems slowly mutate into non-stop conflict factories. The creators don't even realize they're adapting psychologically to the algorithm. But they are. Every dramatic stream gets rewarded. Every meltdown gets engagement. Every emotional collapse gets clipped, reposted, analyzed, and circulated through the digital ecosystem like evidence in a mob trial. The internet transformed humiliation into currency. And what makes this darker is how audiences slowly become conditioned to expect escalation. Regular conversation no longer satisfies people. Now they need betrayals, rage, exposures, arguments, panic, paranoia, and emotional collapse. Because modern internet audiences consume content emotionally the same way casinos condition gambling addiction. There always needs to be one more spin, one more stream, one more revelation, one more meltdown. The machine never stops. That's why live stream creators start feeling trapped, because once audiences associate your channel with chaos, you can't suddenly become peaceful. The viewers punish stability. If the creator matures, the audience complains they became boring. If the creator stops fighting, people accuse them of falling off. If the creator tries to act normal, the clips stop spreading, so the system quietly pressures creators into becoming louder, angrier, and more emotionally unstable versions of themselves. And eventually, the audience begins watching not because they admire the creator, but because they're waiting for the collapse. That's the darkest part. Some viewers become emotionally invested in seeing creators fail publicly, not privately, publicly. Because humiliation has become communal entertainment online. That's why internet drama channels thrive. That's why exposure streams spread like wildfire. That's why audiences gather around live stream wars like villagers standing around a burning building. The internet rewards destruction because destruction generates emotional stimulation, and emotional stimulation generates engagement. Everything comes back to engagement. The algorithm doesn't care if content is healthy. It doesn't care if people are psychologically deteriorating. It doesn't care if creators are destroying friendships, relationships, or their own mental health in real time. The algorithm only measures attention. That's it. If emotional collapse keeps viewers watching longer, the machine promotes emotional collapse. That's why modern internet culture feels permanently angry. Because outrage became infrastructure. Every platform quietly discovered that emotionally agitated people consume more content. So the system naturally amplifies fear, rage, conflict, humiliation, and tribal warfare. And once creators understand that emotionally volatile behavior gets rewarded, some of them begin manufacturing conflict intentionally. Now every disagreement becomes a situation. Every criticism becomes an attack. Every misunderstanding becomes the biggest betrayal on YouTube. Sometimes it's just two emotionally exhausted adults arguing over screenshots, while chat spams clown emojis and somebody donates $5 to say, "Cook him." But the internet presents everything like world-ending drama because emotional intensity keeps people glued to the screen. That's how humiliation became industrialized online. And once humiliation becomes profitable, human beings start unconsciously feeding each other into the machine. Creators humiliate rivals, audiences humiliate creators, communities humiliate outsiders, everybody humiliates everybody, and all of it becomes content. That's why modern live stream culture feels emotionally radioactive. Nobody's trying to resolve conflict anymore. They're trying to monetize it. That's the shift. Conflict used to be something people wanted to escape. Now it's something people schedule live streams around. And honestly, that should probably concern civilization a little more than it currently does. The comment section Malby. Every online ecosystem eventually creates its own street politics. Not real street politics. Internet street politics. The digital version. And somehow it's even more exhausting. Because once a live stream community grows large enough, the audience stops behaving like viewers. They start behaving like a crew. You got the loyal soldiers, the loudmouth instigators, the fake peacemakers, the moderator police, the gossip distributors, the clippers, the spies, the burner accounts. the inside information guys, and the emotionally unstable super chat donors, funding entire wars from a recliner while eating mozzarella sticks at midnight. It's absolute insanity. And the creator slowly becomes the boss of a digital neighborhood they can barely control anymore. That's why live stream ecosystems start feeling less like entertainment and more like organized emotional chaos. Because communities built around conflict naturally develop power structures. Certain viewers gain status, certain moderators gain influence, certain loyalists become feared within the ecosystem. And suddenly the comment section starts operating like a miniature digital mafia where everybody thinks they're uncovering conspiracies because somebody got muted for 20 seconds during a live stream argument. Buddy, sometimes the moderator was just trying to eat dinner. But online communities built around drama become hyper-paranoid because paranoia fuels engagement. Every silence becomes suspicious. Every absence becomes a betrayal. Every deleted comment becomes evidence of corruption. The internet transformed ordinary, emotionally impulsive people into full-time digital detectives investigating live-stream nonsense like they're trying to crack the Kennedy assassination. And honestly, some of these people take internet drama more seriously than their actual families. That's the scary part. Because once emotional investment becomes tribal, logic disappears fast. The audience begins defending creators no matter what happens. Not because the creator is always right, but because criticism threatens the emotional ecosystem the audience built around themselves. That's why online communities become so hostile toward outsiders. Critics aren't treated like people with opinions. They're treated like invaders threatening the tribe. That's why comment sections turn into war zones so quickly. One negative comment appears, and suddenly 20 emotionally activated viewers arrive like digital bounty hunters ready to defend a live stream host who doesn't even know they exist. That's modern internet loyalty. And guys, it gets weird. Because these communities often become emotionally codependent. The creator needs the validation. The audience needs the drama. The moderators need the status. The loyalists need the belonging. Everybody's psychologically feeding off each other in real time. And once that emotional ecosystem locks into place, the channel stops functioning like entertainment. Now it functions like a digital neighborhood with social rules, political factions, emotional alliances, and constant low-level warfare. That's why live stream creators start speaking like gang leaders half the time. Everything becomes loyalty, respect, snakes, rats, betrayal, fake people, real ones. This is YouTube. Not the 5 families. Nobody's smuggling diamonds through Newark. It's a live stream panel argument involving 3 middle-aged men and somebody named Tony 2 Chainz 420 typing in all caps from an iPad. But emotionally, the audience experiences the conflict as real social warfare. That's what makes digital tribalism so psychologically dangerous. Human beings evolved to emotionally attach themselves to groups. The internet weaponized that instinct. Now creators can unintentionally build entire emotional ecosystems where audiences become psychologically dependent on daily conflict, constant outrage, tribal identity, and emotional stimulation. And once viewers emotionally identify with the creator, every disagreement starts feeling personal. That's why internet audiences become obsessed with taking sides, tracking drama, documenting conflicts, monitoring loyalty shifts, and endlessly analyzing live stream interactions like CIA behavioral analysts trapped inside a Red Bull factory. The audience stops watching content. Now they're watching relationships. Who's betraying who? Who unfollowed who? Who left the panel early? Who sounded angry? Who didn't defend who? It becomes digital sociology disguised as entertainment. And because the internet never sleeps, the paranoia never fully shuts off either. That's why live stream creators become emotionally exhausted over time. They're no longer just making content. They're managing community emotions, audience expectations, conflict cycles, loyalty politics, and non-stop interpersonal chaos 24 hours a day. That level of emotional pressure changes people. Some creators become defensive, some become narcissistic, some become addicted to control, some completely lose perspective. And some creators slowly begin viewing their audience less like human beings and more like emotional resources feeding the machine. That's when things get dark. Because once creators start monetizing emotional warfare intentionally, the community begins deteriorating psychologically. Now the creator benefits from division, benefits from paranoia, benefits from conflict, benefits from humiliation. That's why some live stream ecosystems become permanently toxic. Peace becomes bad for business. Drama keeps the lights on. And that may be the most depressing sentence in modern internet history. Because the audience usually thinks they're participating in a community. Meanwhile, they're often participating in a performance economy fueled entirely by outrage addiction and algorithmic manipulation. That's the real hustle, not content creation. Emotional management. And once somebody masters emotional management online, they can build entire digital empires out of anger, insecurity, loneliness, and spectacle. That's the power of the comment section mob. Not physical power. Emotional power. And in the modern internet era, emotional power might be the most dangerous kind there is. The Internet Tough Guy Starter Kit. Every era creates fake tough guys. The old world had dudes leaning against Cadillacs outside social clubs, pretending they were connected because they once carried somebody's dry cleaning in 1987. But the Internet industrialized the process. Now anybody can manufacture a dangerous persona from inside a spare bedroom with LED lights, a webcam, 3 conspiracy theories, and enough emotional instability to scream for 4 uninterrupted hours over a YouTube comment. That's the modern formula. Because the internet removed one critical thing from human interaction: immediate consequences. And once consequences disappear, performance explodes. That's why online personalities become exaggerated so quickly. The louder the personality, the stronger the illusion. The angrier the live stream, the more authentic people assume it is. Meanwhile, half these internet tough guys panic when the DoorDash driver knocks too loud. But online, they transform into digital warlords, delivering speeches like they're commanding troops during the fall of Rome. That's the psychological magic trick of internet culture. Distance creates delusion. And live stream culture rewards delusion because delusion creates engagement. That's why so many creators begin constructing mythology around themselves. The Internet Tough Guy Starter Kit usually includes exaggerated life stories, mysterious connections, vague threats, emotional manipulation, endless stories about betrayal. Fake wisdom speeches. I know things I can't say. energy, and enough paranoia to power a small country. And guys, the audience eats it up like raccoons discovering a buffet behind a casino. Because mythology is entertaining. Reality is boring. Reality looks like credit card bills, laundry, stress, taxes, depression, bad sleep, and arguing with customer service for 40 minutes because your internet went down again. But mythology makes people feel powerful. That's why internet creators lean into characters. The character is stronger than the real person. The character is louder. The character is fearless. The character never doubts itself. And eventually, the creator begins hiding inside the persona because the persona feels safer than reality. That's when online performance becomes psychologically dangerous. Because once the audience falls in love with the character, the creator feels trapped, maintaining it forever. Now every stream becomes theater. The creator can't admit weakness, can't admit insecurity, can't admit confusion, can't admit loneliness. Everything has to become dominance, control, victory, exposure, revenge, or proving people wrong. That's why internet tough guy culture feels emotionally exhausting. Nobody's allowed to be human anymore. Everybody has to become a brand, and the brand must always appear confident, unbothered, dangerous, or smarter than everybody else. Even when the creator is clearly spiraling emotionally in real time. The internet rewards the appearance of power more than actual emotional stability. That's why live stream culture accidentally created entire ecosystems of emotionally fragile people performing invincibility for strangers online. And the audience encourages it because audiences love certainty. People are drawn toward personalities who sound absolutely convinced about everything. Even if they're wrong, especially if they're loud. That's how internet mythology spreads faster than reality. Confidence clips better than nuance. Nobody shares, here's a reasonable, balanced perspective. But scream, everybody's lying to you. Suddenly, the algorithm starts breathing heavy like Tony Soprano climbing stairs. That's the game. And over time, the creator starts escalating harder and harder to maintain audience attention. Now, every stream needs higher stakes, more conflict, more enemies, more betrayal, more emotional warfare. Because once audiences get addicted to intensity, normal conversation stops working. That's why some creators slowly become prisoners of their own gimmick. The audience only rewards the extreme version of them. So the creator feeds the character continuously until, eventually, the real personality disappears. The paranoia becomes real, the anger becomes constant, and the creator no longer knows where the performance ends. That's the final stage of the internet tough guy starter kit. Identity collapse. The creator becomes permanently fused with the online character. And crew. That's one hell of a price to pay for engagement metrics and super chat donations. Because underneath all the screaming, all the fake authority, all the live stream wars, all the digital bravado, there's usually just a regular person terrified of becoming irrelevant online. That's the ugly truth nobody wants to admit. A lot of internet tough guy culture is really just fear wearing a leather jacket and yelling into a microphone. And modern algorithms, they reward that fear every single day. When the character consumes the human being. At the beginning, most internet personalities are still themselves. Maybe exaggerated, maybe louder, maybe playing things up a little for entertainment. But still human, still grounded, still capable of shutting the camera off and returning to reality. Then the audience arrives, and everything changes. Because audiences don't reward moderation online. They reward amplification. If somebody's funny, the audience wants funnier. If somebody's aggressive, the audience wants more aggression. If somebody's controversial, the audience demands escalation. And slowly, without even realizing it, the creator begins adapting psychologically to audience expectations. That's how the internet transforms people into caricatures. Not overnight. Gradually. One stream at a time, one viral clip at a time, one emotional meltdown at a time. Until eventually the creator realizes something horrifying. The audience no longer loves the real person. They love the character. That's the trap. Because now the creator can't calm down anymore. The audience punishes growth. The audience punishes stability. The audience punishes peace. If the creator matures, people accuse them of becoming soft. If they apologize, people call them weak. If they try avoiding drama, the viewers disappear. Because the audience was never truly invested in emotional health. They were invested in entertainment. And chaos is entertaining. That realization destroys people psychologically. Now the creator feels trapped inside a permanent performance. Every live stream becomes pressure. Pressure to entertain, pressure to dominate, pressure to respond, pressure to stay relevant. The creator starts checking comments obsessively, checking clips obsessively, monitoring reactions constantly like a politician trapped inside an endless election campaign. Because internet relevance is fragile. One bad month and audiences move on to the next screaming lunatic holding a microphone beside a glowing neon sign. That fear creates paranoia. Now every critic feels dangerous, every joke feels disrespectful, every disagreement feels like sabotage. And once paranoia enters the ecosystem, the creator starts changing psychologically. That's when creators begin, isolating themselves, surrounding themselves with yes men, blocking criticism, starting loyalty tests, manufacturing enemies, and treating ordinary disagreement like acts of war. Because the creator no longer sees criticism as feedback. They see it as a threat to survival. That's the emotional side effect of building identity around internet attention. And internet attention is one of the most psychologically unstable substances humanity ever created. Because it fluctuates constantly. One day, thousands of people praise you. The next day, the same audience wants blood. That emotional roller coaster damages people over time. Especially creators who already struggle with ego, loneliness, validation addiction, anger, depression, or insecurity. The internet magnifies all of it. That's why live stream culture produces so many emotional collapses publicly. The creators are under constant psychological surveillance. Every sentence analyzed, every expression clipped, every mistake archived permanently. Human beings were never designed to operate under non-stop public observation. Especially emotionally reactive human beings. And eventually the pressure fractures reality. Now the creator can't separate real friendship from audience loyalty, real support from emotional dependency, real criticism from hate, or real life from online mythology. That's when the character fully takes over. The creator begins speaking like the persona even off camera. acting like the persona in private, thinking like the persona constantly. The performance becomes identity. And once identity fuses with performance, the creator loses the ability to emotionally unplug from the internet. That's why some live stream personalities seem permanently agitated, permanently defensive, permanently trapped in conflict. They're no longer living normal lives. They're maintaining digital kingdoms 24 hours a day. And digital kingdoms require constant maintenance. Constant content, constant conflict, constant emotional stimulation. Otherwise, the audience gets bored and migrates elsewhere. That's the brutal reality of online relevance. The machine only loves you while you're entertaining. And entertainment built on emotional chaos eventually consumes the person creating it. That's why so many internet personalities slowly spiral over time. The audience thinks they're watching confidence, but often they're really watching somebody psychologically disintegrate behind a performance mask held together by adrenaline, attention, ego, caffeine, anger, and fear of irrelevance. And the worst part? The audience often encourages the collapse because collapse is compelling to watch. That's the darkest truth of live stream culture. Viewers don't always want creators to heal. Sometimes they just want the next meltdown, the next war, the next betrayal, the next emotional explosion. Because online human suffering became episodic entertainment. And once suffering becomes profitable, the machine never stops feeding. The live stream industrial complex. At some point, live stream culture stopped being entertainment. It became infrastructure. That's the part people still don't fully understand. This isn't just random internet drama anymore. This is an entire economy. A machine. An ecosystem built around attention, outrage, tribalism, conflict, emotional stimulation, and algorithmic dependency. And like every machine in human history, it eventually started consuming the people operating inside it. Because live stream culture rewards one thing above all else: constant engagement. Not truth, not wisdom, not emotional health. Engagement. That's it. The machine doesn't care whether creators are happy, stable, ethical, or psychologically deteriorating in real time. The only thing the system measures is, how long did people keep watching? That single question reshaped modern human behavior online. Because once engagement becomes the ultimate currency, human beings unconsciously adapt themselves to maximize it. That's why modern live stream ecosystems become permanently theatrical. Everything gets exaggerated. The creator can't simply disagree with somebody. Now it becomes the biggest betrayal in YouTube history. The creator can't simply end a friendship. Now it becomes, they stabbed me in the back. The creator can't quietly move on from drama. Now it becomes, tonight I expose everything. Because emotional intensity drives attention. And attention drives survival inside the live stream economy. That's why so many creators become trapped in endless conflict loops. Peace kills momentum. Drama creates momentum. And once creators figure that out, the entire ecosystem begins mutating psychologically. Now audiences expect constant stimulation. The viewers don't just want content anymore. They want Wars, alliances, betrayals, confrontations, public humiliations, meltdowns, and emotional destruction. Because live stream culture accidentally transformed ordinary internet users into spectators at a non-stop digital gladiator arena. And people get addicted to it fast. That's why audiences keep returning night after night. Not because the content is healthy, because the emotional unpredictability creates adrenaline. Human beings are naturally drawn toward emotional uncertainty. Will somebody explode tonight? Will somebody expose private messages? Will somebody leave the community forever? Will somebody break down live on stream? The uncertainty keeps viewers emotionally hooked. That's how live stream culture hijacks human psychology. It creates emotional gambling. Every stream becomes another pull of the slot machine. Maybe tonight something insane happens. And eventually, audiences become conditioned to crave escalation, the same way casinos condition gamblers to chase the next jackpot. That's why internet drama communities never truly calm down. If things become peaceful, the audience gets restless. Somebody eventually manufactures conflict just to restart emotional momentum. That's the ugly secret of the live stream industrial complex. Drama isn't always accidental. Sometimes conflict becomes business strategy. Because controversy spreads faster than creativity. Outrage clips better than intelligence. Humiliation travels farther than nuance. That's why emotionally chaotic creators often outperform emotionally stable creators online. The machine rewards volatility. And the creators trapped inside the system slowly begin restructuring their personalities around audience demand. Now every sentence becomes performance. Every interaction becomes content. Every private disagreement becomes potential monetization. The audience becomes the machine. At first glance, most people assume live stream culture is controlled by creators. But that's not entirely true. Because eventually the audience starts controlling the ecosystem too. That's the terrifying part. The viewers shape behavior. They reward certain personalities, reward certain emotions, reward certain conflicts. And creators adapt accordingly. That's why live stream culture often feels like a psychological feedback loop spiraling out of control. The creator feeds the audience. The audience feeds the creator. And together they slowly manufacture a reality where emotional instability becomes normalized. That's how the machine sustains itself. Because audiences don't just passively consume internet chaos anymore. They participate in it. They fund it, encourage it, amplify it, defend it, escalate it. Sometimes they even help script it unintentionally. That's why live stream chats feel so emotionally charged. The audience isn't merely observing conflict. They're emotionally investing in it. Every super chat becomes reinforcement. Every donation becomes validation. Every clip becomes propaganda for whichever side the viewer emotionally attached themselves to. And once viewers become emotionally attached to internet personalities, they start behaving irrationally. That's human nature. People defend creators they've never met, attack strangers over live stream drama, lose friendships over internet allegiances, spend hours analyzing body language from live stream panels like FBI profilers trapped inside a vape shop. Buddy, some of these people got spreadsheets tracking moderator betrayals. That's not entertainment anymore. That's digital obsession. And the scariest part? The audience usually thinks they're independent thinkers, while the algorithm quietly herds them emotionally, like cattle through outrage cycles. Because modern platforms learned something incredibly profitable. Emotionally activated people stay online longer. So the system continuously feeds audiences anger, fear, humiliation, tribal conflict, and paranoia. That's why online discourse feels permanently hostile now. Everybody's emotionally overstimulated. Everybody's reactive. Everybody's searching for the next enemy, the next betrayal, the next scandal, the next meltdown. And audiences become addicted to the emotional rhythm of conflict without even realizing it. That's why peaceful creators often struggle to maintain attention online. Peace doesn't stimulate adrenaline. Drama does. The internet transformed emotional stimulation into currency. And eventually viewers stop asking, "Is this healthy?" Instead, they ask, "Did you see the stream?" That's the psychological shift. Entertainment stopped being about enjoyment. Now it's about emotional activation. People don't necessarily watch live stream chaos because it makes them happy. Sometimes they watch because it makes them feel something. Anything. Anger, excitement, validation, belonging, outrage, superiority. The emotional reaction becomes addictive. That's why internet audiences often behave like gambling addicts, chasing emotional jackpots. Maybe tonight's stream explodes. Maybe somebody crashes out publicly. Maybe a creator finally snaps. Maybe private messages leak. Maybe a friendship dies live on air. The uncertainty keeps people emotionally locked in. And the platforms encourage it because emotionally invested audiences generate massive engagement. That's the ugly truth underneath the entire system. The audience is no longer simply consuming content. The audience became part of the production process. Every reaction feeds the machine. Every outrage cycle strengthens it. Every emotionally charged comment fuels the algorithm further. And once enough people emotionally invest themselves into the ecosystem, the machine develops a life of its own. That's why some live stream communities become impossible to calm down. The audience itself begins demanding escalation unconsciously. If a creator attempts peace, the audience accuses them of becoming boring. If conflict dies down, the audience starts creating new speculation. Because drama became the emotional fuel source powering the entire ecosystem. That's why internet personalities feel constant pressure to maintain chaos. They're no longer just entertaining viewers. They're feeding an emotionally conditioned audience trained to crave instability. And sweetheart, that's one hell of a responsibility for emotionally reactive people carrying unresolved trauma and internet addiction. Because eventually the audience begins expecting creators to sacrifice their emotional well-being for entertainment. And some creators do exactly that. They destroy friendships publicly, destroy relationships publicly, destroy their own sanity publicly. All because the machine keeps rewarding emotional collapse with attention. That's the dark genius of the modern internet. It transformed human emotional dysfunction into participatory entertainment. Not passive entertainment. Participatory. Everybody contributes. The creators, the viewers, the clippers, the reactors, the drama channels, the commenters, the moderators. Everybody feeds the ecosystem together. And once millions of emotionally overstimulated people become connected through outrage algorithms 24 hours a day, Society itself starts changing psychologically. Attention spans collapse, patience disappears, nuance dies, empathy weakens. Everything becomes instant reaction, instant judgment, instant warfare. That's the world the internet accidentally built. A civilization emotionally trapped inside a permanent comment section. And honestly, we may not fully understand the long-term consequences of that yet. The death of shame. One of the biggest casualties of the internet age, shame. Not toxic shame, not healthy embarrassment, social shame. The natural human instinct that once stopped people from behaving like absolute maniacs in public. Because before the internet, most people had limits. You embarrassed yourself in front of your neighborhood, your co-workers, your family, your friends, and eventually society pushed back. Now, the internet rewards shamelessness financially. That changed everything. Modern online culture discovered something horrifying. The less dignity somebody has, the more attention they can sometimes generate. And attention became more valuable than self-respect. That's why live stream culture escalates endlessly. People slowly lose the ability to feel embarrassment because embarrassment no longer punishes behavior online. Sometimes it rewards it. The bigger the meltdown, the bigger the audience. The more public the humiliation, the more clips circulate. That's why internet personalities eventually begin crossing lines they never would have crossed years earlier. At first, it's small things, oversharing, public arguments, emotional outbursts. Then slowly the boundaries collapse completely. Now creators live stream, friendship breakups, family conflicts, mental breakdowns, financial problems, substance abuse, relationship disasters, and emotional collapses to thousands of strangers in real time. And the audience watches like it's episodic television. Human beings were not designed for this. We were never supposed to emotionally perform ourselves 24 hours a day for public evaluation. That level of visibility damages people psychologically, but the internet normalized it so gradually, nobody noticed how strange it became. Now creators openly self-destruct online, while audiences debate who won the argument. That's insane. The internet turned emotional deterioration into spectator entertainment. And because audiences reward vulnerability only when it's dramatic, creators begin escalating their behavior subconsciously. Everything becomes more extreme over time. More anger, more exposure, more humiliation, more desperation. Because normal emotional honesty doesn't spread online, emotional spectacle spreads. That's why modern internet culture often feels emotionally grotesque. Everybody's oversharing, everybody's performing, everybody's emotionally leaking into public spaces constantly, and somehow the audience got conditioned to view this as normal behavior. That's the death of shame. Not because people stopped feeling emotion, because the platforms incentivized people to override emotional self-protection for engagement. The internet rewards visibility above dignity. That's the equation. And once creators realize humiliation can generate attention, the boundaries disappear fast. That's why live stream culture often resembles emotional exhibitionism. People reveal things publicly they would have taken to the grave 20 years ago. Not because society became healthier, because attention became addictive. And attention online feels powerful. Especially for lonely people. Especially for emotionally wounded people. Especially for people who never felt seen in real life. That's why internet fame becomes psychologically intoxicating. For the first time in their lives, people feel visible, important, heard. And once somebody emotionally connects self-worth to audience attention, they become vulnerable to the machine. Because audiences are unstable. Algorithms are unstable. Internet loyalty is unstable. The same crowd praising somebody today can publicly destroy them tomorrow. That emotional instability forces creators into constant performance maintenance. They can never relax. Never disappear too long. Never lose momentum. Never stop feeding the audience. Otherwise, the machine moves on to the next emotionally volatile personality, waiting to monetize themselves online. That pressure erodes dignity over time. Because survival inside the live stream economy often requires constant emotional exposure. And eventually, creators become so accustomed to public oversharing, they lose the ability to separate private emotion from public content. That's when internet personalities begin live streaming every aspect of their psychological lives: anger, loneliness, betrayal, jealousy, resentment, fear, and insecurity. Everything becomes content. That's the sentence defining the modern internet. Everything becomes content. The breakup becomes content. The meltdown becomes content. The addiction becomes content. The humiliation becomes content. And because audiences reward emotional spectacle, the cycle intensifies endlessly. That's why some live stream ecosystems feel spiritually empty underneath all the noise. The personalities aren't truly communicating anymore. They're emotionally performing for survival. And the audience? The audience becomes desensitized. After enough public humiliation, people stop reacting like human beings witnessing suffering. Now they react like sports fans watching highlights. Cook him. She crashed out. This is legendary. Clip this. That emotional detachment changes society slowly. Because once human beings become accustomed to consuming public humiliation as entertainment, empathy weakens. Everything starts feeling transactional. Even emotional collapse. That's the dark side of modern internet culture nobody fully talks about. Not censorship, not politics, not technology. The psychological cost of transforming humanity into permanent performers. And sweetheart, we may still be in the early stages of understanding how ugly that becomes long-term. The internet replaces real life. The internet was originally sold as a tool. A place to share ideas, connect with people, learn things, laugh, escape boredom. Nobody realized it would eventually become a substitute for reality itself. That's the part people still struggle to admit. For a growing number of people, the internet isn't part of life anymore. It is life. The live stream became the hangout spot, the social club, the emotional outlet, the friend group, the entertainment, the conflict, the validation, and the identity. That's why online drama communities become so emotionally intense. Because when somebody's entire emotional ecosystem exists online, internet conflict no longer feels trivial. It feels existential. That's why people react so violently to digital betrayal. The brain processes social rejection online similarly to rejection in real life. Emotionally, the pain still feels real. That's why creators and audiences alike become psychologically trapped inside these ecosystems. The internet starts replacing experiences that used to happen physically. Instead of meeting friends, people watch streams. Instead of building local communities, people join Discord servers. Instead of developing real-world identity, people construct digital personas. And eventually, people begin spending more emotional energy maintaining online relationships than physical ones. That changes human psychology dramatically, because real life naturally contains balance. Real life forces interruption. You gotta go to work, pay bills, sleep, drive, clean, deal with responsibilities. But the internet never stops. There's always another stream, another argument, another controversy, another notification demanding emotional attention. That endless stimulation slowly rewires people psychologically. Now silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels uncomfortable. People become addicted to constant emotional input. That's why some viewers spend entire days cycling through live-stream drama ecosystems like emotional tourists wandering through digital war zones. The chaos becomes routine, and once chaos becomes routine, normal life starts feeling empty. That's one of the hidden dangers of online culture. It conditions people to expect constant emotional stimulation. Real life can't compete with algorithmically engineered outrage. Real conversations don't hit like live-stream wars. Real friendships don't create dopamine spikes like internet conflict. That's why some people become emotionally dependent on digital ecosystems without realizing it. The internet creates the illusion of connection while often deepening isolation underneath it. That contradiction defines modern online life. People are more connected technologically than ever before, yet emotionally lonelier than previous generations. And that loneliness fuels the entire machine. Lonely people stay online longer. Lonely people become emotionally attached faster. Lonely people are more vulnerable to communities promising belonging. That's why live stream ecosystems become psychologically powerful. They simulate intimacy. Viewers begin feeling like creators know them personally. The audience develops emotional familiarity through repetition. Same voices, same jokes, same nightly routines, same conflicts. Over time, the live stream becomes emotionally comforting, regardless of how toxic the environment actually is. That's why some viewers remain loyal to chaotic creators for years. The stream becomes part of their daily emotional routine, and routines are incredibly difficult for human beings to break. Especially emotionally charged routines. That's why internet communities often survive even after endless scandals, betrayals, meltdowns, and public humiliations. The audience isn't staying because everything is healthy. They're staying because the ecosystem became emotionally familiar. Familiarity creates attachment, even dysfunctional attachment. That's why some live stream audiences resemble people trapped in emotionally abusive relationships. The creator explodes emotionally. The audience gets hurt. The creator apologizes. Everybody reunites. Then the cycle repeats again. And because the internet archives everything permanently, the drama never fully disappears. Old conflicts remain searchable forever. That's another psychological burden unique to modern internet culture. Human beings were never designed to carry permanent digital records of every emotional mistake they ever made. But online, nothing dies. Every meltdown survives. Every bad decision survives. Every humiliation survives. That creates enormous psychological pressure for creators constantly living in public. And eventually some creators stop feeling like real people entirely. Now they feel like content machines, public property, digital mythology, or emotional circus attractions endlessly performing for strangers. That destroys identity slowly, because healthy identity requires separation between public life, private life, performance, and authentic selfhood. The internet collapses those boundaries completely. Now, creators wake up already inside the performance. Every thought becomes potential content. Every interaction becomes material. Every emotional reaction becomes monetizable. That's why modern online personalities often seem exhausted, even while appearing successful. They're psychologically working all the time. The internet turned human identity itself into labor, and the audience unknowingly participates in the process by demanding non-stop emotional access to creators 24 hours a day. That's why internet culture feels spiritually draining now. Nobody gets to disappear anymore. Nobody gets to quietly heal. Nobody gets to fail privately. Everything happens publicly, instantly and permanently. And once human beings start living primarily through digital ecosystems, the line between entertainment and psychological survival begins disappearing entirely. That's the real danger, not technology itself, but what happens when emotionally vulnerable people begin replacing reality with performance-driven digital worlds, designed specifically to keep them emotionally engaged forever. And honestly, humanity may have walked into that trap without fully understanding what it was building. The collapse of the human being into content. At some point, the internet stopped documenting life and started consuming it. That's the final stage of the machine. Because once everything becomes content, human beings themselves slowly become products. Not people. Products. Emotions become monetized, relationships become monetized, humiliation becomes monetized, mental instability becomes monetized. Every aspect of human existence gets converted into engagement fuel for platforms that never stop demanding attention. And that changes people permanently. Because once somebody realizes their pain generates views, their brain begins processing suffering differently. Now every bad moment carries potential value. The breakup isn't just heartbreak anymore. It's content. The betrayal isn't just emotional pain. It's content. The meltdown isn't just psychological collapse. It's content. That psychological shift is catastrophic for human health. Because people need private emotional spaces to heal properly. The internet destroys privacy. Now creators process grief publicly, process rage publicly, process loneliness publicly, process humiliation publicly. And audiences consume those emotions like entertainment products. That's why modern internet culture feels emotionally distorted. The line between authentic human experience and performance has almost completely disappeared. Nobody knows when creators are being genuine anymore. And honestly, sometimes the creators don't know either. Because after enough time online, the performance rewires identity itself. The creator begins subconsciously asking, "How will this play online?" before emotionally experiencing reality naturally. That's terrifying. Human beings were never designed to filter existence through audience perception 24 hours a day. But live stream culture normalized it. Now creators eat publicly, fight publicly, cry publicly, spiral publicly, and emotionally deteriorate publicly, while audiences react in real time like sports commentators covering psychological warfare. And the audience becomes desensitized slowly. That's how civilizations emotionally decay. Not through one catastrophic event, through normalization. At first, public humiliation online feels shocking, then funny, then ordinary. Eventually, audiences stop seeing creators as human beings entirely. Now creators become characters, memes, content farms, lolcows, villains, heroes, or emotional avatars people project themselves onto. That's the dehumanization stage of internet culture. And once audiences emotionally detach from the humanity of creators, things get ugly fast. Because empathy weakens online when human suffering becomes entertainment. That's why audiences sometimes encourage creators to keep spiraling. Not consciously, but emotionally. The audience wants another rant, another war, another breakdown, another exposure, another emotional explosion. Because emotional intensity keeps viewers stimulated. That's why live stream culture often feels spiritually predatory. The machine feeds on unstable emotion. And creators trapped inside the system slowly become emotional fuel sources, keeping audiences engaged. That's the industrial side of modern internet culture nobody likes discussing. The creator becomes labor. But not physical labor, emotional labor. Their job becomes generating enough emotional stimulation to keep people watching. That's exhausting psychologically. Because unlike traditional entertainment, live stream culture often requires creators to expose real parts of themselves continuously. The audience demands authenticity, but authenticity online becomes weaponized. If creators reveal weakness, the audience clips it. If creators reveal insecurity, the audience analyzes it. If creators make mistakes, the internet archives it permanently. So creators begin developing defensive personalities built around ego, aggression, paranoia, or emotional armor. The Internet Mirror. The most dangerous thing about the internet, it reflects people back at themselves. Not accurately, exaggerated, distorted, amplified. That's why online ecosystems become psychologically addictive. The internet doesn't just show people who they are. It shows them emotionally intensified versions of themselves, angrier, louder, more paranoid, more validated, more powerful, more victimized, more important. And once people begin emotionally identifying with those amplified versions, they start losing connection with reality. That's what happened to a huge portion of modern internet culture. The live stream stopped being a tool for communication. Now it functions like a digital mirror constantly feeding creators emotional reinforcement. If the creator's angry, the audience amplifies the anger. If the creator's paranoid, the audience amplifies the paranoia. If the creator feels betrayed, the audience validates the betrayal. That creates emotional echo chambers powerful enough to reshape identity itself. And let me tell you, human beings are extremely vulnerable to emotional reinforcement. Especially lonely human beings, especially insecure human beings, especially people desperate to feel significant. That's why internet attention becomes psychologically intoxicating. For some creators, it's the first time in their lives people listen to them consistently. The first time people cared what they said. The first time they felt important, respected, feared, or admired. That emotional validation hits the brain like a drug. And once somebody becomes dependent on external emotional validation, they begin protecting the source of that validation at all costs. That's why internet personalities often become emotionally defensive over time. The channel stops being content. Now the channel becomes identity. Criticism no longer feels like disagreement, it feels like psychological attack. That's why creators spiral so hard sometimes over comments most emotionally healthy people would ignore. because emotionally healthy people separate criticism from identity. But internet ecosystems slowly destroy that separation. Now the creator experiences attacks on the channel as attacks on the self. And the audience reinforces it constantly. You're the realest one. Everybody's jealous of you. They're trying to destroy you. You expose the truth. That level of emotional reinforcement changes people psychologically, especially creators already struggling with ego, insecurity, or unresolved emotional issues. Eventually, the creator begins viewing themselves through audience mythology instead of reality. That's how internet delusion develops. Not always through narcissism, sometimes through repetition. If thousands of people continuously reinforce an emotional narrative around somebody, the human brain eventually starts believing it. That's why live stream ecosystems often become detached from reality over time. The creator gets trapped inside their own mythology, their own outrage, their own paranoia, and their own emotional feedback loop. And because audiences reward escalation, the creator keeps intensifying the performance. Now every disagreement becomes proof of persecution. Every criticism becomes evidence of conspiracy. Every former friend becomes a traitor. That's why online communities often resemble emotional cult dynamics, not because creators intentionally build cults, but because emotionally dependent audiences naturally begin organizing around loyalty structures. The creator becomes the center, the truth teller, the misunderstood figure, the emotional leader. And once emotional leadership becomes tied to audience validation, the creator becomes terrified of losing control. That fear creates increasingly extreme behavior. Now creators begin testing loyalty, purging critics, rewriting history, controlling narratives, and emotionally manipulating audiences to maintain influence. Not always maliciously, sometimes unconsciously. But the result is the same. The ecosystem becomes psychologically closed off from reality. That's why some live stream communities become impossible to reason with. The audience isn't operating on logic anymore. They're operating on emotional identity protection. And once emotional identity fuses with online tribalism, people stop thinking critically. Now they defend the ecosystem because the ecosystem became part of who they are psychologically. That's the internet mirror. It reflects people back at themselves, emotionally amplified, until eventually they stop recognizing where reality ends and performance begins. And honestly, that may be one of the most psychologically destabilizing inventions in modern human history. Because human beings were never designed to stare at distorted reflections of themselves 24 hours a day, while millions of strangers emotionally react in real time. That level of reinforcement warps perception. And once perception warps long enough, reality itself starts collapsing underneath the performance. That's when creators begin fully living inside the character. Not pretending anymore. Believing. And guys, that's when the internet stops being entertainment entirely and starts becoming psychological transformation at industrial scale. Old grudges remain searchable forever. Old clips resurface constantly. Old betrayals get replayed endlessly like digital crime evidence. That creates permanent psychological warfare inside these communities. The creator can never fully move on. The audience never fully forgets. And the ecosystem keeps recycling emotional conflict forever because conflict generates engagement. That's why live stream culture often resembles an endless gang war without physical violence. Territories form, alliances shift, people defect, wars restart constantly. The only difference is the weapons are clips, screenshots, live streams, reaction videos, and emotional manipulation. That's the digital prison yard. Everybody's watching everybody. Everybody's measuring status constantly. And everybody's terrified of social humiliation because humiliation online happens publicly and permanently. That pressure changes people psychologically over time, especially creators who spend years operating inside these environments. Eventually, the creator begins expecting conflict everywhere. Now they monitor comments obsessively, interpret criticism emotionally, assume hidden motives, and constantly prepare for betrayal. That's what long-term hypervigilance does to the brain. And the audience often experiences similar psychological conditioning. Viewers become addicted to tension. Peace feels boring, stability feels suspicious, normal conversation feels empty. That's why some audiences unconsciously provoke conflict themselves. Without drama, the ecosystem loses energy. And once conflict becomes necessary for emotional stimulation, the community begins emotionally decaying from the inside out. That's the hidden psychological cost of internet tribalism. Not just toxicity, identity distortion. Because people trapped inside conflict-driven ecosystems eventually begin viewing the entire world through us, versus them thinking constant suspicion, emotional defensiveness, and public performance. That's exhausting for the human nervous system, and a lot of people online are way more psychologically burned out than they realize, because human beings were never supposed to live inside permanent social warfare 24 hours a day. But that's exactly what the internet accidentally built, a civilization emotionally trapped inside a non-stop digital prison yard where everybody's screaming for respect while secretly terrified of being ignored. The collapse of real identity. One of the most disturbing things about internet culture is how easily people lose themselves inside it. Not metaphorically, literally. Because after enough time performing online, some creators stop remembering who they were before the audience arrived. That's the hidden psychological cost nobody talks about. The creator starts out making content, then slowly the content starts remaking the creator. Every live stream rewards certain behavior. Every audience reaction reinforces certain emotions. Every viral clip pushes the personality further toward exaggeration. And eventually, the creator begins unconsciously editing themselves for engagement. That's when identity starts collapsing. Now every thought gets filtered through. How will the audience react? How will this clip? How do I stay relevant? How do I keep control of the room? The creator stops emotionally existing naturally. Now they exist performatively. That's exhausting psychologically. Because human beings need spaces where they are not being observed. Private spaces, quiet spaces, moments without performance. The internet destroys those boundaries, especially for live stream personalities. Because live stream culture rewards non-stop accessibility. The audience expects constant presence, constant opinions, constant reactions, constant emotional transparency. And once creators become financially or emotionally dependent on audience attention, disconnecting starts feeling dangerous. That's why some creators seem permanently online emotionally, even when the stream ends. The camera shuts off, but psychologically, the performance keeps running. That creates identity fragmentation. The creator develops the public self, the private self, the live stream self, the defensive self, the audience-approved self, and eventually the self that no longer knows which version is real anymore. That's not healthy for the human brain. Human beings weren't designed to maintain multiple emotionally contradictory identities under permanent public surveillance. But the internet normalized it. That's why some creators eventually spiral into paranoia or emotional instability. They lose emotional grounding. Reality starts becoming secondary to audience perception. And once perception matters more than reality, people begin living through performance instead of authenticity. That's why internet personalities often seem emotionally hollow over time. The audience sees confidence, but underneath the confidence is often exhaustion, fear, validation, addiction, identity confusion, and terror of becoming irrelevant. Because online relevance is temporary. The machine only values creators while they generate emotional stimulation. That creates constant psychological insecurity. One bad month, one scandal, one audience shift, and the ecosystem moves on to the next personality instantly. That instability forces creators into permanent emotional survival mode. Now they can't simply exist peacefully. Everything becomes maintenance, maintaining relevance, maintaining audience loyalty, maintaining mythology, maintaining emotional momentum. And eventually, the creator begins treating themselves like a product instead of a person. That's the final stage of internet identity collapse. The human being becomes branding. Even emotions become strategic. The apology becomes content. The rage becomes content. The vulnerability becomes content. The breakdown becomes content. Nothing remains sacred. Nothing remains private. Everything becomes part of the performance economy. And once somebody loses the ability to emotionally separate themselves from their online character, the internet owns them completely. That's why some creators seem incapable of stopping even when they're visibly miserable. The audience became their oxygen supply. Without the stream, without the comments, without the validation, they no longer know who they are. That's horrifying when you really think about it. An entire generation slowly constructing identity through algorithms instead of reality. That changes society at a deep psychological level. Because identity used to form through family, community, real-world experience, relationships, hardship, work, and physical interaction. Now, identity increasingly forms through engagement metrics, followers, audience approval, and digital performance. That's unstable because algorithms don't love people. Algorithms love stimulation, and stimulation constantly changes. So creators trapped inside the machine begin constantly reshaping themselves to maintain emotional relevance online. That's why internet culture feels spiritually empty sometimes. Everybody's performing. Everybody's branding themselves. Everybody's selling emotional versions of themselves to audiences. And after a while, nobody remembers what authenticity even looks like anymore. That's the collapse of real identity. Not because technology destroyed humanity overnight. Because human beings slowly traded authentic existence for digital validation, one live stream at a time. And honestly, the scariest fucking part is how normal all of this started feeling. The final meltdown. Every internet ecosystem eventually reaches the same destination. Collapse. Maybe not immediately, Maybe not publicly at first, but eventually the machine starts eating itself alive. Because ecosystems built entirely around rage, attention, ego, conflict, tribalism, and emotional stimulation cannot sustain stability long term. That's the fatal flaw of the live stream industrial complex. The very behavior that creates rapid audience growth also destroys emotional balance over time. And you can only operate at psychological redline for so long before something breaks. That's why nearly every major online drama ecosystem eventually experiences civil wars, betrayals, public breakdowns, paranoia spirals, moderator revolts, friendship collapses, financial accusations, or emotional explosions, broadcast live in front of thousands of strangers. The pressure becomes unbearable eventually. Because internet creators don't just carry their own emotions anymore. They carry audience expectations, community politics, financial pressure, algorithmic pressure, public scrutiny, and non-stop emotional surveillance 24 hours a day. That level of psychological exposure damages people, especially emotionally reactive people already addicted to validation. And eventually, the creator begins unraveling publicly. At first, the audience thinks it's entertaining, then uncomfortable, then sad. That's the progression. Because the internet trains audiences to mistake emotional collapse for content until the collapse becomes too real to ignore anymore. That's when live stream culture gets genuinely dark. Not funny dark. Real dark. The creator stops sleeping properly, stops trusting people, stops emotionally regulating, starts interpreting ordinary criticism like existential warfare. Every stream becomes more aggressive, more paranoid, more unstable. The creator starts fighting friends, supporters, moderators, other creators, and eventually their own audience. That's when the ecosystem enters terminal instability. Because once creators begin viewing the audience itself as threatening, the machine starts imploding internally. The audience feels betrayed. The creator feels persecuted. Everybody becomes emotionally defensive. And suddenly the live stream no longer feels like entertainment at all. Now it feels like watching somebody psychologically drowning while still trying to perform confidence. That's why some internet collapses become impossible to look away from. Audiences are witnessing authentic emotional disintegration underneath the performance mask. And human beings are morbidly fascinated by collapse. That's ancient psychology. People gather around fires, accidents, fights, public disasters. The internet weaponized that instinct at global scale. Now emotional collapse becomes communal viewing experience. And because the internet archives everything permanently, the creator can't escape the meltdown afterward. The clips survive forever. The screenshots survive forever. The humiliations survive forever. That permanence intensifies the psychological damage dramatically. Because historically, human embarrassment faded over time. Online humiliation doesn't fade. It loops endlessly. That's why internet creators often become trapped inside emotional cycles they can't psychologically escape from. The audience remembers every mistake. The creator remembers every betrayal. The ecosystem remembers every conflict. Nothing disappears. And eventually the creator starts living defensively. Every interaction becomes risk management. Every live stream becomes emotional damage control. That's exhausting beyond description. especially for creators who built their entire identity around public attention. Because once the audience begins turning against them, the creator experiences something psychologically catastrophic. Identity collapse. The applause disappears, the validation disappears, the mythology cracks publicly. And underneath the online character, there's often just a deeply exhausted human being who forgot how to exist without an audience watching them. That's the final meltdown. Not the screaming. Not the rage streams. Not the public arguments. The realization that the internet character became more real than the actual person underneath it. That realization destroys people emotionally. Because once creators spend years emotionally surviving through performance, they often lose the ability to function comfortably outside the performance itself. Silence becomes terrifying. Privacy becomes uncomfortable. Normal life feels emotionally empty. That's internet addiction at identity level. And a lot more creators are trapped in that psychological prison than people realize. The audience sees entertainment. But behind the scenes, many creators are operating under burnout, paranoia, financial instability, emotional exhaustion, sleep deprivation, validation addiction, and non-stop psychological pressure from thousands of strangers emotionally reacting to their existence every single day. That pressure eventually breaks people. Not because they're weak. Because human beings were never designed to perform emotionally for mass audiences non-stop without consequence. The live stream industrial complex normalized psychological overexposure. And once overexposure becomes identity, collapse becomes inevitable. That's the final truth hidden underneath modern internet culture. Not everybody online is evil. Not everybody online is fake. A lot of people are simply trapped inside systems rewarding their worst impulses while punishing emotional balance. And eventually the machine collects its debt. Always. That's the ending nearly every emotionally unstable online empire eventually reaches. Not triumph. Not peace. Exhaustion. Public exhaustion broadcast live for an audience trained to mistake human collapse for entertainment. And honestly, that may be one of the darkest cultural developments of the modern age. The internet never logs off. The scariest part of all this? The machine never sleeps. Real life used to end for the night. The bar closed. The social club emptied out. People went home. Arguments cooled down. Emotions settled. The internet destroyed that rhythm completely. Now the conflict never stops. There's always another notification, another live stream, another exposure, another betrayal, another clip, another comment, another war waiting to begin at 3:30 in the morning because somebody typed, "Bro fell off." That endless emotional stimulation changed humanity more than most people realize. Because human beings psychologically need silence. We need distance, reflection, recovery, disconnection. The internet replaced recovery with perpetual engagement. Now people wake up already emotionally plugged into chaos. Before their feet even hit the floor, they check notifications, check comments, check drama, check reactions, check whether strangers online still approve of their existence today. That's psychologically corrosive, especially for creators. Because creators trapped inside live stream ecosystems never fully get to return to themselves. The audience follows them everywhere now. phones, messages, comments, clips, mentions, reaction videos. There's no emotional off switch anymore. That's why so many online personalities seem permanently exhausted. Not physically, spiritually. The creator becomes trapped inside a permanent state of emotional anticipation. Always waiting for backlash, for betrayal, for criticism, for the next conflict cycle. That level of hypervigilance slowly damages the nervous system. And the audience experiences similar psychological exhaustion too. People spend hours every day emotionally consuming rage, humiliation, conflict, paranoia, and tribal warfare disguised as entertainment. Then society wonders, why is everybody anxious all the time? Because people are emotionally marinating themselves in digital conflict for 6 straight hours every night before bed. That affects the human brain. Of course it does. Human beings absorb emotional environments. And the internet became one giant emotional environment permanently optimized for stimulation. That's why online culture feels increasingly disconnected from reality. The system rewards speed over reflection, reaction over understanding, performance over authenticity, and outrage over emotional balance. Everything becomes immediate. Immediate anger, immediate judgment, immediate warfare. Nobody pauses anymore. Nobody breathes anymore. Everybody reacts. That's the psychological operating system of the modern internet. And because reaction spreads faster than wisdom, the loudest voices dominate the ecosystem. Not the healthiest voices. Not the smartest voices. The loudest. That's why internet culture often feels emotionally distorted. Calm people get ignored. Balanced people get ignored. Nuanced people get ignored. But somebody screaming, "Everybody betrayed me!" Suddenly, the algorithm treats it like the moon landing. That's the sickness of the machine. It amplifies emotional instability because instability keeps people emotionally engaged. And once engagement becomes society's dominant currency, human behavior itself begins mutating around it. That's what we're witnessing now. Not just internet drama. Behavioral evolution. Human beings slowly adapting themselves psychologically to survive inside digital attention economies. That's why authenticity feels increasingly rare online. Because authentic people don't naturally behave like algorithms reward. Algorithms reward emotional extremity. So creators exaggerate, audiences exaggerate, communities exaggerate. Until eventually everybody becomes a performance version of themselves. And somewhere along the way, people forget who they actually are underneath it. That's the final cost of the livestream industrial complex. Not canceled channels, not internet drama, not even emotional collapse. Identity erosion. The slow destruction of authentic human behavior underneath non-stop performance pressure. And honestly, we may still be living through the earliest stages of that transformation as a civilization. That's why this documentary matters. Not because one live streamer yelled too much. Not because one channel spiraled into chaos. Because these ecosystems reveal something bigger happening to modern society itself. The internet didn't just create new entertainment. It created new psychology. A world where attention became survival, outrage became currency, Humiliation became spectacle, and identity itself became content. And once human beings begin living primarily for audience reaction, the line between person and performance starts disappearing completely. That's where we are now. A civilization emotionally trapped inside endless digital noise, desperately searching for connection while algorithms quietly monetize the collapse in real time. And the craziest part? Tomorrow, another live stream starts all over again. Another creator goes live, another audience gathers, another war begins, another emotional collapse becomes content. The machine keeps running because the internet never logs off, and neither do the people trapped inside it. The moral: the Shyt show, the internet, and what the hell happened to us? So after everything, after the live stream wars, the screaming, the fake internet politics, the emotional hostage negotiations disguised as content, and the endless digital chaos orbiting ecosystems like the Shyt show, what's the actual lesson here? Honestly, channels like the Shyt show are less important as individual creators and more important as examples of what the internet has slowly turned people into. Because the modern live stream world doesn't just reward personalities anymore, it rewards escalation. And once a creator enters that machine, the machine starts reshaping them psychologically in real time. That's why channels built around constant conflict eventually begin operating like emotional casinos. The audience keeps returning because every stream carries the possibility of another fight, another betrayal, another meltdown, another exposure, another emotional train wreck broadcast live to strangers eating cereal at 1:30 in the morning. That unpredictability creates addiction. And ecosystems like the Shyt show become perfect case studies for the live stream industrial complex because they reveal how online culture transforms ordinary human dysfunction into permanent entertainment infrastructure. The internet discovered something dangerous. Human beings will emotionally attach themselves to chaos if chaos provides community, identity, attention, and belonging. That's why audiences stay loyal to toxic online ecosystems for years. Not because the environments are healthy, because the environments feel emotionally familiar. And emotionally familiar chaos can become addictive. That's the hidden psychology underneath live stream culture nobody wants to admit. The viewers aren't just watching drama. A lot of them are emotionally living inside it. That's why every disagreement feels catastrophic, every betrayal feels personal, every live stream feels like some historic event, when really it's usually just emotionally exhausted adults yelling into webcams while chat spams clown emojis, and somebody donates $10 to say, "Tear him up." And sweetheart, that's not civilization, that's digital Colosseum behavior. And channels like the Shyt show help expose how deeply normalized this became online. Because modern internet culture rewards emotional instability more aggressively than emotional balance. The louder somebody screams, the more real audiences think they are. The more chaotic the environment becomes, the more attention it generates. And eventually the creator starts adapting psychologically to survive inside the system. That's the trap. Now every stream needs more outrage, more drama, more enemies, more emotional warfare, more paranoia, more humiliation. Because calm doesn't spread online anymore. Chaos spreads. That's why so many live stream ecosystems slowly evolve into non-stop emotional conflict factories. The creator becomes trapped. The audience becomes addicted. The algorithm keeps rewarding escalation. and everybody involved starts losing perspective together. That's the terrifying part, not just the creators, the audience too. Because audiences participating in these ecosystems slowly become conditioned to consume emotional collapse as entertainment. Eventually, viewers stop asking, "Is this healthy?" Instead, they ask, "Yo, did you catch the stream last night?" That psychological shift says a lot about where internet culture ended up. And guess what, guys? The Shyt show ain't unique. That's the uncomfortable truth. He's part of a much larger online ecosystem, an example of where rage became branding, paranoia became content, attention became identity, and emotional instability became monetizable. Deep down, he's a creep who wants attention, never peaked in life. That's what this whole documentary was really about. Not just one creator. An entire culture. A digital world where human beings increasingly perform themselves for attention, while algorithms quietly reward their worst impulses in real time. And honestly, humanity may not fully understand the long-term psychological consequences of that yet. Because once people start building identity around audience validation, they stop asking, "Who am I really?" Now they ask, "What version of me keeps the audience watching?" That's the real horror underneath the live stream industrial complex. The slow erosion of authentic human identity underneath non-stop digital performance pressure. And channels like The Shyt Show simply reveal what happens when internet culture pushes that process to its loudest, most chaotic extreme. That's the warning. Not, "Look at these bad people," but look at what the machine rewards. Because the machine rewards outrage, rewards humiliation, rewards conflict, rewards emotional instability. And until audiences stop feeding those systems attention, the cycle probably never ends. Another live stream, another meltdown, another war, another creator slowly becoming consumed by the character they built online. All while the audience watches from chat, screaming, "This is cinema!" And maybe that says more about modern society than people are comfortable admitting. The Shyt Show and the endless performance. So what happens after all this? After the live stream wars, after the betrayal arcs, after the moderator purges, after the rage streams, after the final exposés that somehow lead to 6 more exposés by Thursday afternoon. What's left? Usually exhaustion. Because channels like The Shyt Show don't just represent internet entertainment anymore. They represent what happens when human beings spend too long trapped inside systems, rewarding emotional chaos over emotional balance. And the truth is, a lot of these creators probably didn't originally plan to become full-time digital warlords, screaming about loyalty and betrayal beneath glowing LED lights like emotionally exhausted nightclub philosophers. The machine slowly pushes people there. One live stream at a time, one audience reaction at a time, one dopamine hit at a time. That's how the transformation happens. At first, it's fun. Then it becomes identity. Then, eventually, the creator wakes up, realizing they haven't emotionally relaxed in years, because every interaction now feels connected to audience perception somehow. That's what makes internet culture psychologically brutal. The performance never fully ends. Even after the live stream shuts off, the creator's brain stays online. Still checking comments, still checking reactions, still monitoring enemies, still thinking about clips, still emotionally trapped inside the ecosystem. That's why live stream personalities often seem permanently agitated. They're emotionally operating inside non-stop digital warfare environments. And buddy, human nervous systems weren't built for that. Especially not 24 hours a day. But audiences don't usually see the psychological exhaustion underneath the performance. They see confidence, dominance, charisma, drama, conflict, entertainment. Meanwhile, underneath the screen, a lot of creators are quietly drowning in validation addiction, paranoia, burnout, sleep deprivation, financial pressure, identity confusion, and fear of irrelevance. That's the hidden emotional economy of live stream culture. Everybody's pretending to be in control while the algorithm quietly controls everybody. That's why channels like The Shyt Show become fascinating cultural case studies. Because beneath all the chaos, all the yelling, all the fake internet gangster energy, you're really watching modern humanity trying to emotionally survive inside attention economies that reward instability more aggressively than peace. And unfortunately, instability spreads faster. That's why the internet feels permanently tense now. Everybody's reacting, everybody's performing, everybody's branding themselves emotionally. Even regular people who never live stream are starting to psychologically adapt themselves around audience perception. That's the bigger issue. The live stream industrial complex didn't stay contained to creators anymore. It infected culture itself. Now everybody's managing image, engagement, identity, performance, attention, and public reaction constantly. That's exhausting for the human brain. And maybe that's why so many people online feel spiritually fried all the time. Too much noise, too much outrage, too much performance, too much emotional stimulation without enough real human grounding underneath it. That's why documentaries like this matter. Not because internet drama is important. Most of it's ridiculous. Honestly, half these live stream wars sound like emotionally unstable raccoons fighting over expired mozzarella sticks behind a Jersey gas station. But underneath the absurdity, there's a real psychological story unfolding. A story about loneliness, identity, attention, validation, performance, and what happens when entire generations begin emotionally living through algorithms instead of real-world human connection. In other words, The Shyt Show is a loser never peaked in life. That's the real documentary. Not just The Shyt Show. The internet itself. Because whether people want to admit it or not, a lot of modern online culture stopped functioning like entertainment a long time ago. Now it functions like emotional infrastructure. And once society starts building identity around emotional performance, the line between creator, audience, and algorithm starts collapsing into one giant machine, endlessly feeding itself attention. That's where we are now. And honestly, nobody fully knows where this road ends yet. But one thing's for sure. Tomorrow night, another live stream starts. Another war begins. Another audience gathers. Another creator performs emotional survival for strangers online. And somewhere deep inside the machine, the algorithm smiles. Because the internet never sleeps, and neither do the people trapped inside it. You made it this far through this psychological autopsy of modern internet culture. First of all, God bless you. Second of all, you are now officially part of the Pizzaverse. You survived the live stream wars, the emotional hostage situations, the algorithmic paranoia, the moderator politics, the rage economics, the fake internet alpha culture, and approximately 14 hours of grown adults yelling, "Bro, you don't know what I know." That alone deserves a medal and probably blood pressure medication. So if you enjoyed this documentary, like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, hide your browser history, and remember to emotionally detox after consuming internet chaos for extended periods of time. Seriously, go outside, drink water, look at a tree, call your grandmother, pet a dog, listen to jazz. Do something reminding you humanity still exists outside live stream thumbnails and comment section warfare. Because crew, the internet got people acting like every Discord disagreement is the opening scene of The Godfather Part 5. And channels like The Shyt Show perfectly capture the bizarre modern loser with a mic phenomenon, where ordinary internet personalities slowly transform into full-time emotional broadcasters operating inside non-stop outrage economies. That's what makes this stuff fascinating. Not because the drama itself matters historically. Most of it absolutely does not. In 50 years, historians are not gonna gather inside universities studying the great moderator betrayal of 2026. Nobody's grandchildren are inheriting sacred YouTube panel transcripts. But psychologically, culturally, this stuff matters. Because live stream ecosystems reveal what happens when loneliness meets technology, attention becomes identity, and emotional instability becomes monetizable infrastructure. That's the real story underneath all the screaming. And honestly, a lot of modern internet culture now feels like professional wrestling performed by emotionally exhausted philosophers trapped inside pawn shops with Wi-Fi. Everybody's cutting promos, everybody's exposing enemies, everybody's delivering dramatic speeches about betrayal, while chat spams clown emojis, and somebody donates $5 to request violence. Absolute madness. And yet, millions of people tune in nightly because the internet successfully transformed emotional conflict into serialized entertainment. That's why The Shyt Show works as a documentary example. Not because it's uniquely insane, because it's familiar. It reflects the exact same patterns happening all across online culture, tribalism, performance addiction, attention dependency, and non-stop emotional escalation. The names change. The personalities change. The platforms change. But the psychology stays the same. That's the internet now. A giant digital theater where everybody's simultaneously performing, watching, reacting, judging, branding, and emotionally surviving in public together. So if this documentary made you laugh, good. If it made you uncomfortable, even better. Because underneath the sarcasm and the jokes is a real question modern society still hasn't answered. What happens when human beings stop living life and start performing it for algorithms instead? That's the question hanging over everything now. And until people figure that out, the machine keeps running. Another live stream, another rage spiral, another digital civil war. Another creator slowly becoming consumed by the character they built online. All while the audience types, "This is content." So subscribe for more documentaries, more internet autopsies, more late-night Jersey psychological warfare analysis, more digital mob sociology, and more cinematic breakdowns of whatever bizarre online civilization humanity accidentally created while nobody was paying attention. And remember, the algorithm doesn't care about truth. It cares about engagement. Don't let the machine convince you outrage is a personality trait. At the end of the day, don't be a lonely loser like Ack. We'll see you degenerates at the next one.
Bro, I'ma tell you like this. I am not the one, little son. Better run with a gun. I'ma tell you like this. Fuck you and fuck where you from. Gotta say the word once and it's done. I'ma tell you like this. We can get the crackin', little bitch. Boy, quit without that attitude, sis. I'ma tell you like this. Better man up, lil' jit. Let me know if it's a problem, it's lit. Still a big talk, cause I got the biggest follow through. I follow money, you tryna get hoes to follow you. I am mad at you. How you hung around me and your dumb ass never learned how to keep it G. God damn it, sickening. Hope you listening. Post how you the realest, but you know it's different. Say you got them dividends, talking about them Benjamins. I ain't even gonna violate and talk about what I learned, but keep my name out your bitch ass mouth. Sure, there's other ways you can get that clout. You can dick ride like you do behind the scenes, cause you be switching sides like you LGB and T. But I know that boy's around. I know he gon' keep talking. I wasn't raised like that, but I don't come around them types often. Tell you like this, that, pull up where you at. You know we can get the shit poppin'. Tell you like this, that, pull up where you at. You know we can get the shit. Bro, I'ma tell you like this. I am not the one, little son. Better run with a gun. I'ma tell you like this. Fuck you and fuck where you from. Gotta say the word once and it's done. I'ma tell you like this. We can get it crackin', little bitch. Boy, quit without that attitude, sis. I'ma tell you like this. Better man up, lil' jit. Let me know if it's a problem, it's lit. I got a couple reasons. Some of these dudes is turning to haters. I'm a motherfucking reminder how they can never make it. I'm up in this shit and I never needed no one. I'm a business bitch, you gotta pay me to show up. I got that energy, you know that energy, that BDE shit. That I don't really know why that bitch intimidate me shit. That you can't lease this wavy baby make you seasick. That killing you with everything I do, bitch, rest in pieces. You fucking buffoon, thinking you fucking with me. It's ironic, I'm a CEO and don't need company. Look, I'm up in these prices, so dummies don't come to me. Asking me to give them verses and they wanna come for me. You a whole asshole if you a dude and hate bitches, but your eyes light up when a dude's name's mentioned. Bro, compliment a woman, then you tell him stop simping. Bro, you got vagina envy, tell your homie to stick the tip in. You sus in the comments, you sus in real life. Imagine making fake pages just to speak your own mind. God damn, that must suck, you hate yourself and know why. Seek help, little bitch, before you take your own life. Shit, bro, I'ma tell you like this. I am not the one, little son. Better run with a gun. I'ma tell you like this. Fuck you and fuck where you from. Gotta say the word once and it's done. I'ma tell you like this. We can get it crackin', little bitch. Boy, quit without that attitude, sis. I'ma tell you like this. Better man up, lil' jit. Let me know if it's a problem, it's lit.